Hey everyone, it's Jennifer McGuire. I was playing around with some new stamps from My Favorite Things today, and while I was doing it, I decided I wanted to do some stamping in silver. And I started to take a closer look at some silver inks that I had, and I decided to show you that in a video today. So this is a card we're creating. You can see that silver stamping in the center. I also have some tricks for layering ink that I'm going to do on this card too. Now, after I created this simple one-layer card, I also decided to do the same card but emboss it with the matching die. So you'll see here, this card's a little bit different. It's got some texture because I did some embossing. So at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how you can easily do this. I've got a great trick for it. So let's go ahead and start with our card. This is a one-layer card. I've cut some 110-pound Neenah cardstock to 4¼ by 11 inches, and I'm going to do a score line here at 5½. I love top folding cards. I just think they're fun and different. That's why I do so many of them. And I like to use the 110 Neenah pound cardstock because it's a nice heavy weight. That's a newer weight cardstock to the crafting world, and I just love it. So I'm going to lay this piece out flat so we can do some stamping on it. I have this new stamp set from My Favorite Things. It's an Easter Bunny stamp set, and it's got this cluster of flowers, like this triangular cluster of flowers that you can build on each other, the leaves, the flowers, and the centers. Love it because you can do a multicolored image very quickly. We're going to use that and also a greeting from this great new Words of Inspiration stamp set from My Favorite Things. There's this thank you, your kindness means more to me than you know. This one says, I'm always here for you. There's a bless you, and then prayers one that I'm going to use on the card. I love how nicely done these sentiments are in the stamp set. I think it's the fonts are really nice and it's just very classy. So this is the sentiment I chose from that. I'm going to put it in the center and then have the triangle cluster of leaves and flowers above and below this sentiment. Now I wanted to have my sentiment in silver, but I didn't want it heat embossed. I wanted something a little shimmery, not like super shiny and raised. So I decided to try out a new silver ink that I got in the mail yesterday. It's the Silver Delicata. I've got the gold Delicata and I really like it. It's a nice gold shimmer and I know a lot of people love that ink. So I thought I'd give this one a try too. Now when I stamp it, you'll see that it's kind of a warm silver and it doesn't have as much shimmer, I think, as the gold. There's a little bit there. I'll show you later how you can achieve the shimmer. But I just wanted to show you how it stamps and compare it to the silver ink that I currently like. So I'm going to go ahead and also stamp this in the solid stamp image. This is a solid image that I use for my ink swatches. It's a good way to tell how well an ink stamps. And you'll see it's not very solid, but it's got a nice softness to it and a tiny bit of shimmer. Now this is where you can really see the shimmer, where I really like this ink. It's when you go direct to paper. When you go direct to paper, you can see the shimmer there. So if you have techniques where you would just kind of smear this ink over the background, it would be beautiful. But for stamping, I don't know that I really am happy with the results that I get there, but I'm going to show you a trick to make it better. So I thought I'd double stamp it to see how that gets, and gets a little bit more solid there where you overlap. Now this is the silver ink that I've always liked. It's the Hero Art Silver. I'm going to stamp this and you'll see this is a much more crisp image and it's more of a true silver, more of a gray silver as opposed to a warm silver. So you can see how those two compare there. Now when you stamp this again, you'll see that you get a much more solid result here. It doesn't have a ton of shimmer. So if you want shimmer, I'm going to show you in a second how you can get the shimmer, but you do get solid results from this ink. So I think for stamping silver, I like this silver from Hero Arts better, but if you're going to go direct to paper, I like the Delicata. Now here's the trick. I don't really like the gold from Hero Arts, so I like the Delicata Gold and the Hero Arts Silver. So it's not a match. It's two different companies, but I think that for me, those are the results that are best, at least when I'm playing around with it. Now here's the way to add shimmer to these inks. You take the Perfect Pearl color of Perfect Pearls, it's just the white regular color, and you pounce some of it on the ink. Now this keeps the silver color and makes it shimmery. So I really like the Hero Arts silver with this on it. It just looks like the perfect shimmery silver. It's just beautiful. Now once you've put it on and covered your stamped image, you take your brush and you go back and forth really firmly to knock off all the excess. Now the great thing about Perfect Pearls over other pigment powders is that you can set them when they come in contact with water. So what I do is I take a mist of water and spray it in the air and wave my paper through it. So I'm not saturating or putting drops of water. It's kind of like when you spray perfume in the air and you walk through it. It's the same kind of thing. And that's enough to set it. You don't really have to worry about it rubbing off much. It'll be fine to put in the mail in an envelope. And there you get a great silver shimmer. So that's what I'm going to do today. But before we go on and do that, I wanted to show you how these looked on colored cardstocks because I think people might wonder. Now when you stamp with the delicata, it seems like the shimmer ends up on the outside edge of your stamped image, which is kind of cool, but it's not like covering the whole stamped image. It kind of seems like it squishes it out. This is the Hero Arts, and you can see it's much more solid, but it's very faint on the dark color. But once you put the perfect pearls on it, there's where you see it. The Hero Arts is a little more crisp, so that's what I'm going to go with today. Okay, so now it's time to do that silver stamping on the center of my card. I want to make sure it's on the center so that when we have the simple card, it looks very clear and clean and simple that it's in the center. So I'm putting a mark that's halfway through. I love my T-ruler. I think this is the handiest tool to have in crafting. It's only like a couple bucks. So I'm going to go ahead and draw two lines that are a little bit above and a little bit below that halfway mark. So now I'm going to go in with my Hero Arts silver ink and I'm going to stamp right in the middle of those lines. This is just an easy way to make sure that you get pretty much in the center. So once I've stamped this, you'll see I've got a nice crisp image. I'm going to go ahead and carefully erase the lines and pounce on my perfect pearls. Once I have them on there, I'm just going to brush roughly to get them off. You want to get off as much as you can from around it. And then just take like a Swiffer dusting cloth or something to wipe away the extra around it if there is any there. It really is quite pretty how this looks in real life. There's just a really nice softness about it. You could get a really nice silver metallic look if you used embossing powder, but I really like the softness of the shimmer. So now it's time to do that stamping around the edge there. This is the new stamp set from My Favorite Things. And I'm going to layer up some inking here so that we can get some depth to our stamping. So I'm going to go ahead and first stamp the leaves. I'm using, I think this is the Sour Apple first. And it's just like a softer green. Now once I've done this above and below, I just flip my image to get it above and below. And so it ends up like a, the flipped image. Once I've done that with the lighter ink, I'm going in with the darker. This is gumdrop green, I believe. I'm going to ink this onto the stamp, but I'm going to wipe some of the ink away from the tips of the leaves, just so we're getting some darkness towards the inside of the leaves. And I'm just wiping it off on a cloth. Any kind of cloth would work. Paper towel would be fine too. Now I'm going to look through the clear stamp and stamp it directly on the stamping we already did. So you can see there that the tips of the leaves are green, and the tip inside of the leaves are a darker green. So I'm going to do it again on the top. I'm wiping some of that darker green away from the tips of the leaves so that we're only adding a darker ink on the inside of the leaves. And we're going to take this, and since it's clear, it's easy to do, we're going to stamp it directly on the stamping that we've already done there on the top. And this gives kind of a two-tone to your stamping. Now this My Favorite Things ink is a dye ink, but it doesn't kind of blend as much as the Hero Arts ink. So you can kind of keep layering on it and it won't oversaturate your paper. So for the flowers, look how easy that flower image just fits right in there. It's meant to build like this. I used the bubblegum ink and I felt it was too soft at first, so I'm stamping it twice directly on top of each other and you get a more vibrant image and it stays nice and crisp. That's one of the things I like about these inks. You can do this with pigment inks also, but you don't get as much intensity from the second set of stamping. It doesn't add as much color to it. These dye inks work great for it. Now for the centers, these are all positioned perfectly again to quickly stamp right in the center. I'm using the Orange Fizz and stamping it 2 or 3 times so that that orange really shows up in the center of the pink. And you don't have to worry about those bleeding into each other. This ink dries very quickly and stays where it is. It doesn't do any kind of blending or bleeding. So it's a nice ink for this layering up of color, but you can try it with any ink that you may have. Now I wanted to add a few little kind of berries here and there. So there's this cluster of 3 flower centers that's meant for another cluster of flowers in the stamp set. But I'm just inking up one of the dots and I'm just going to stamp it here and there just to kind of fill out this triangular look. And anything I do on the top I make sure I do on the bottom also, just so that we can have kind of the uniform look. On some of these, I'm going to go ahead and stamp on top of it with the orange so that it matches the center of the flowers that we did before. I just love these kind of stamps that build on each other. I think it's so fantastic because it took no time at all to do all those colorful flowers. So now I want to go ahead and make sure that we set that perfect pearl that we put on there. So I'm just misting a little water in the air and waving it through. Sorry, this looks so funny on the video. After I do that, I'm just going to heat set it. It's not much water in there, you could just leave it, but I want to heat set it just to make sure that nothing bleeds, and I shouldn't have any problems anyways. So there you can see that soft shimmer that you get on that sentiment. I just love that silver. Now to pull some of that shimmer into the flowers, I'm just using a little bit of my Wink of Stella shimmer pen to add like a dot in the center of those flowers, just a tiny off center on the orange part. And if you just keep going over over and over the same spot again and again, you can make that more and more intense, and it just adds a little shimmer to it. So that's the first version of this card. Now for the second one, I decided to add a little bit of embossing to this to add some texture. Many companies now are coming out with stamps and matching dies. This My Favorite Things Easter Bunny set where I got this flower from has a matching die, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. I love this technique. It just gives a fun definition or texture to your card. So I have the matching die. This is what is used to cut out that cluster of flowers that we did. And I'm going to cut it from some scrap paper. This piece that we're using here is just going to help us place the die on top of our stamped image. So now I have my stamped image here and my die. This little placeholder here that I have, I'm going to cut a slit, and you'll see why in a second. Now I'm going to position this directly over our stamping so you can make it sure it's nice and perfect. And I'm going to take the die and slide it right into the place, so kind of pop into place. Now while holding that die there, I'm going to take away that holding place on the outside. That's why I cut this slit, so you can take it away easily. And then I'm going to put a piece of tape to hold this in place so we can run it through our die cut machine. That stamping you see on the outside, those are those extra dots that I added. So to emboss with a die, you use your die cut machine like you would if you were using an embossing folder. So any die cut machine would work for this. Just set it up like you're using an embossing folder. You put down one of your cutting plates, and then you take an embossing pad. I'm using one from My Favorite Things. You could use a piece of felt for this if you don't have a pad. And you just put your paper on top of it with the die face down and the other cutting plate on top. When you run it through your machine, basically this die just presses into the paper because of that foam behind it, or because of the pad behind it, and leaves that impression right around it. Just a great way to add some texture to it. So now I'm going to do the same on the bottom. I'm putting my placeholder around it, pop the die right into place, hold it there while you pull away the holding place. There you go, and now I'm going to tape that down and run it through again, but this time I don't want to flatten the whole card because we already did the embossing. I want to leave that embossing that we already did hanging outside of the plates. So let me close it up here some. You'll see that the embossing that we did on the top on the flowers there on the left, that's hanging outside of the plate so it doesn't get squished, or we would just flatten the embossing we just did. So now I'm just embossing this bottom set of flowers. I'm going to run it through. It goes through nice and quickly, and there you have the embossed image on the bottom part. It's just a way you can add some fun to your one-layer cards using the matching dies that many companies have for their stamp sets. So there you have it. Sorry I squeezed so much into this video, but I wanted to show you how you can get a nice shimmery silver look, how you can do embossing, and also how you can layer colors on top of each other to make them more bold. If you have any questions about the supplies I used, I have them linked below in my YouTube description. Also, you can go to my blog at Jennifer McGuire Inc. for much more information. If you like this video and you want to see more, it would be really helpful if you gave us a thumbs up, and we hope to see you again in a future video.